welcome back to the Marketing for the Uninhibited podcast. I'm super excited to talk to today's guest. We have been in each other's social media orbits for quite some time now. Her name is Andréa Jones, and she is the founder of the Savvy Social Business School. Is that right?
Yeah, Savvy Social School.
Savvy Social School and the Savvy Social podcast, where she gives such great social media tips. I have done some of her courses and some of her workshops in the past, and she's great at what she does. So I'm excited to have her here to share all of her social media knowledge with you all. Welcome to the podcast, Andréa.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Miranda.
Yes, I'm excited to get started. So I'll let you introduce a little bit about yourself. I know you have been in business for a long time, right?
Yeah, almost 8 years now as my own business. And prior to that, I worked in the hospitality industry and was kind of put in charge of social media as being one of the youngest on the team at the time.
Yep.
So I've seen the evolution over the years, and there's a lot of mixed feelings about social media. It can be a wonderful, magical place to connect with people and build communities and build your business, but I also know it can be overwhelming. And so my approach is to really help business owners kind of understand where those boundaries are, where those lines are, and actually use social media as a tool to grow your business. I, as you mentioned, run the Savvy Social School, which is our membership for business owners. And then I also have an agency as well, where we offer done-for-you services for those folks who just want it off of their plate. So we see it all, and I'm happy to bring some of those strategies and share them here with you today.
Yes, thank you so much. So let's start with the number one thing that my clients tell me, and we were talking a little bit before we recorded, which is that they know social media is important, but they are tired of being on their phones and they're like burned out. So how do you help people focus their attention while they're on social media so that they can scale back the amount of time they're spending like on their actual phone?
Yes. And this is so easy to get caught up in. And I don't want you to beat yourself up if this is you, because the platforms like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, they're all designed to be addictive. They're literally designed and created to keep people on them for as long as possible, which is fine for consumers and it works to our benefit as business owners, but we have other things to do. So, just kind of coming at it with that awareness that social media is designed in a certain way can help. And then I love for business owners to really be intentional about their social media use. And I actually did create a meditation around this. It's free. If you Google social media unwind, it's an audio that's out there for free in the world. But the process is really kind of separating yourself, your personal use and your business use for social media, and really getting clear on how you want to show up like as a human being and then as a business owner. And so really being clear about that, either meditating on it, writing it down, being intentional, because it's so easy for those two things to get combined. So, me scrolling, looking at cute dogs, totally different time from me actually using it as a tool to grow your business. So really being intentional about that and making some decisions. One of my favorites for myself is I don't have any notifications on my phone. Not even email, because
I don't either.
I find, I get so distracted. And it's so easy to just, look down and suddenly Instagram is like 90% of people have seen this. And then you're back on the app again. You're like, have they?
Right.
So that's how I do it.
Yeah, I find that is really helpful, especially when you are a busy business owner and I find like trying to stay present in each activity that I'm doing. So like, is it social media time or is it like time to hang out with my stepdaughter Rebel? Like I don't want my phone dinging all the time when we're spending time together, or like intentionally leaving my phone behind when I'm going, like if I'm walking the dog. I see people who are walking their dogs and they're like on their phone the whole time. Yeah. And so I just think being really intentional about it is a great point. And I see your cute little pup back there. So cute.
Yes. Gibson's always back here. But yeah, I don't walking in the dog and scrolling, I don't have the dexterity for that.
No, either. I don't know. I like that seems dangerous to me. And I'm sure for those people, maybe it's like the 5 minutes they have in between calls and they need to catch up on something. But being intentional with your time, I think, is a great point. And then how do you like just taking it a step back, like what foundational elements should business owners consider before starting their social media marketing strategies? So, like as a coach, we talk about all things marketing, and of course, social media is a part of that strategy, but it's not a specific, like social media strategy.
Yes. And you probably talk about this a lot, but really understanding the message that you want to share with the
Mhm.
world is so important before you start posting on social media. And having that front and center. So, understanding the transformation that your work brings.
Mm.
So, how do people feel, before discovering you, before buying your products or, hiring you for a service? How do they feel? And what are they going through? What are their challenges? And then really deeply understanding why they purchase and how their life is different. Everything from, if you're a candle company, people love like the atmosphere of having their room smell a certain way. It's
Mm.
not just about the candle itself, it's that feeling afterwards. Or if you're a service provider, like a bookkeeper, then it's, having that reliable person they can trust with some of the most important pieces of their business. So it's really understanding those languages. And it's not just, buy this candle, hire me for the service,
Right.
but deeply understanding that transformation. And then also understanding you and like how you want to deliver that.
Yeah.
So I'm a talker. I prefer
Same.
video, audio. Yes.
Yes.
If I have to write, it's going to take me longer and it actually may impede me actually putting something out there.
Hmm.
So I love to just create impromptu videos. That's my style. That's what works for me. Some of my clients prefer to write. Some of my students prefer just to have beautiful imagery. So really like tapping into, what works for you and how you will tap into that creativity, because this is a skill. Like everything else in social media is a skill that you have to learn. And if you don't like any part of it, it's going to be really hard to commit to showing up consistently in that way. And as adults, especially, we don't like showing up and not knowing. We already learned. We learned how to tie our shoes. We learned, we learned how to walk and talk. We don't want to keep learning stuff all the time. We just want to be able to do it. So if you feel like you're struggling through some of those elements, you're trying to force a new skill so much so that you feel like so uncomfortable showing up every time that
Hmm.
you're hindering yourself from progress. So those are some of the foundational things that I think business owners should start to understand before approaching social media.
Yes, I call that like making the barrier to enter like lower for yourself, because I think in the beginning, people, as business owners, we put a lot of pressure and we make that bar so high. We're like, we have to do reels, we have to do YouTube, we have to do all of these things. And then it's overwhelming, or like you said, it's not a communication strength, that it's not natural to us to communicate in that way. So it feels uncomfortable. And then we just kind of push it off or end up not showing up for that thing. So I love what you were saying about that. And I know that you talk a lot about the three W's and making sure that those three W's, like making sure you can answer those questions. So it's what do you sell? Who is it for? And then why does it matter? Which is where you talk about that transformation. And I think that is really, I like to talk about that too. Like, how are they feeling before and after? And you shared an exercise in one of your podcasts recently that I thought was so helpful, where it was just like get a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. And then like what are the feelings before they work with you? And then what are the feelings after? And just using that to create content. And I love that because I think emotion is such a big part of marketing. And a lot of times when clients come to me and they say, well, like, this isn't selling or I'm not getting engagement, it's because they're not conveying that emotion. There's not that, they're not elaborating on that story or that experience. Like, it's not just the candle, it's so much more.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I love that before and after strategy because you're right. The emotional piece. I mean, as humans, just think about the last couple of things that you bought. it's probably because it hit an emotional spot for
Mhm.
you, right?
Yeah.
Like for me right now, I am 18 weeks pregnant, none of my clothes fit. And I saw a Facebook ad for this like belly extender for your
Oh,
like
yes.
winter coat. And I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't know I need this. I cannot zip up my winter coat right now. I'm buying it.
It's
And that was like an
amazing.
emotional, like I just feel bigger and it's
Yes.
uncomfortable. So
And it
I think
solved a
tapping into that.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And same. So we're going out of town this weekend, and I have never actually traveled with my stepdaughter before. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, we need a car seat. Like, what are we going to do in Virginia? So I was just on Google and I got served an ad for this website that's like baby gear rentals. It's like Airbnb, but for children's things. So when you go, you put in your location of where you're going, and then you'll get all of these individual owners from whom you can rent these items. And so I like rented a car seat from someone, and she is going to deliver it to the house that we're staying at and then pick it up on the Sunday that we leave. And it's way cheaper. I think you can rent them from the airport, or sometimes there's something you can do there, but it was just way more cost effective than like, and also more convenient than lugging our own car seat on the airplane.
Yes.
And so that solved an immediate problem, and it tapped into like an emotional need, because I was focused on convenience in that case. Like I really don't want to like worry about checking this thing, and I would rather just buy one there, just
Yeah.
like leave it. So I think like thinking about the feelings, the emotions conveyed in those transactions is so helpful. And for someone who maybe writing is not their strong suit, or they're having trouble like conveying that emotion and sharing that story, and it feels like they're just pushing product, how do you help them kind of get back to the story or to elaborate on those emotions?
Yes. What there's a few places that I like to go to tap into this because sometimes we are so close to our thing, like our thing
Mhm.
that we're creating. But I like to go other places and get inspiration. So one of my favorites is Amazon. The
Oh,
Amazon review section, it has so many thoughts from people about their emotional experience with products. So go
amazing.
to a competitor or go to even something on a similar topic. Like if you sell car seats, maybe it's a how to book on the car seats, right?
Mhm.
And go look at the comments, both the top 5-star reviews and the 1-star reviews. And you'll start to see some of the words that pop up.
Mm,
If someone says, this was great. My family got to go on vacation because of this. That's a
wow,
story. Or
right.
this was terrible because it didn't fit and I felt like I wasted my time. Like that's another
Mhm.
story and an emotion. And so you can go to some of those places, YouTube, Facebook groups. I just love Amazon review sections because the
That's so
transparency is off
fun.
the charts. But yeah, it's a fun way to kind of pull some of those stories and jumpstart your thoughts and how your clients may be feeling.
Yeah, I love that. So then, and I have clients too look at their own reviews, because I think that can be a nice little confidence boost. And then you also get some nice verbiage in the same way. But I like the idea of finding inspiration outside of the social media world, or like Amazon, or so once they have that inspiration, is there like, what's the best way to jumpstart like content? Like, are we, because so I have a podcast that comes out today when we're recording this in real time, but and it's all about, like, in the marketing world we talk about consistency, right? And I think that can be very helpful, like having a consistent schedule in developing your habit of like social media marketing or other marketing action items. But I sometimes find that being consistent can be a trap for people, like creatively, like they get out of the habit of checking in with their intuition or following their creative flow, because it's not, Woman Crush Wednesday or whatever their schedule tells them to do. So, do you
Yes.
have any other ideas for that?
Yeah, it is tough because, especially when you do get into that rhythm, because social media changes all the time.
Mhm.
So I do recommend having a few different habits. So you talked about kind of the regular habit of creating content, but there
Mhm.
also should be a regular habit of evaluating that content as well.
Perfect.
So it's not just creating it, but evaluating it. And once you get to that evaluation stage, it's really looking with a critical lens at what's working and what's not.
Right.
So, if Woman Crush Wednesday is, you like writing it, you like creating it, but when you look at it, it's not serving a purpose. People aren't liking or commenting, or they aren't sharing, saving, clicking. Then it's time to look at a different way to approach that type of content piece. So it's really having that evaluation, and then also making sure when you're evaluating, you're looking at the intent of the post. I see people all the time who, they're promoting something, like say you're promoting your podcast episode.
Mhm.
And then they go to the comments and they're like, nobody's commenting. Well, that's
Right.
not really what you're asking with that type of post. With the podcast promotion, you're saying, go listen to the podcast. So you want to look at those sorts of actions, which
Right.
may be, link clicks, or if you're on Instagram, it's if you're saying link in the bio. Okay. So did people go over to your profile to even get to the link in the bio? Right. So it's
Mhm.
kind of making sure that your evaluation matches the intent of the post and then changing it up. You don't have to hop on a trend immediately. And
Right.
you don't have to do that. But following some of the marketers that you trust and kind of listening to their advice can be helpful for business owners to understand which trends are the ones that they want to, jump on. Should they cancel their Instagram account and jump on
Yeah.
TikTok, or, those sorts of things, looking for advisement from the people who, like you and I, who look at it every single day, could help with some of those decisions.
Yes, that is so great. And I think too, like if you ask your audience, like what do they want to see? I think that can be helpful sometimes to figure it out. I did this always cracks me up. Like so I got bangs a few weeks ago, and I swear that was the most for that week, the most engaging content. Like people were messaging me, they were like all types of things, asking about my bangs. And then one day I had them like, pulled back, and people were like, where did your bangs go? Why are they pulled back? Like, did you? And I just thought if ever there was an example of how like just being yourself can increase engagement, it's important to share valuable business content. But if you're a personal brand, I think it's also important to just like be human and give those little aspects of personal life that you can connect with, or this weekend. Okay, our neighbors, and we have some neighbors that are have high maintenance lawns. So their front lawns look like they vacuum them. And ours, we have the most trees in our front yard. So it's like the contrast is very apparent between the two. And I did a whole little thing in my stories just talking about it on Saturday or whatever day. And people went bananas. They were like taking the poll, they were messaging me. I had like people who have plant shops telling me that leaves were good for the earth and that the grass has to die in order to come back. Nothing to do with marketing, entirely personal and just so goofy, right? Like I was just making fun of us for not raking the leaves and my neighbor for like vacuuming, it seemed. And that just got people engaged in a silly way, right? Because we talk about business stuff and marketing and social media, and sometimes I find that people just want to break from that, like for a moment. Do you ever find that?
Oh yeah. What I've been seeing that works is the non-marketing content. Like, and even the more unpolished, the better. Like if
Yeah.
your kid's screaming in the background,
Mhm.
if, for me, it's my dogs are always here and like in the way. People love that.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily want to see the perfectly polished photo shoot or the perfectly designed graphic. They want the human, the real, the people-y content,
Mhm.
which is, partially frustrating as a marketer, but
Yeah.
also it should be a relief as like a small business owner. You don't need all of the bells and whistles. Just let people in a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's another boundary too, just figuring out what that looks like for you. But let people in a little bit, show something. And people feel like they know me because I talk a lot about my dog. And I don't really share a lot of the other personal elements of my life. But that's one of those things where I'm like, he loves being on the camera. People love seeing him on the camera. So he's in there.
It's so funny. And that's where I think as business owners, our minds want to overcomplicate what we have to do on social media, when in reality, that was just what was happening in my house on Saturday. There was like an entire discussion, and every fall, this is what happens here because we're the slacker neighbors that don't rake our leaves as often, and it just was so funny. And I think you can learn at the same time that the audience is learning about you when you share these personal details about your dog, or even just like your significant other popping in once in a while. You're learning about them and like what so many people were so passionate about like the yard work stuff, and that just taught me a lot. Like, oh, a lot of us are in a similar age group. And on my feed, all of us are like, they're all entrepreneurs. Most of them have children, and so just like yard work at this stage of life is just kind of getting pushed farther down the to-do list. And that was something that we can relate on. And so, I think it's helpful to figure that out about your audience too. Like what are the other talking points or pain points in their life that you might be able to help them with?
Yeah, it's that two-way conversation, honestly.
Yeah.
This is the magical thing about social media that I geek out about all the time is that, when we think about traditional marketing, radio ads, TV ads, it's just very one way, billboards. But social media, it's that conversation piece. It's the community piece that's really important. And your conversation about leaves on the front yard, you never know what that's going to turn into. You don't know
No
who knows
idea.
who. You're like deepening connections with people, and they're all entrepreneurs. And so,
Mhm.
you're deepening connections with people that's layered, and that helps, form an actual bond. It's just like making friends. You don't just connect over one thing. It's usually multiple things. And that's hard to
Right.
kind of pinpoint why some people are friends and some people are casual acquaintances. And I think
Mhm.
that's the piece about social media that's so freaking magical.
It is. And I think the way because I think you did a reel about this recently too, where you were talking about like how much you love your love for social media and that you and your partner met on YouTube.
Yes, we
Oh,
did.
how did that happen?
We were just so we collaborated on a YouTube video, just kind of like we're collaborating here on the
Mhm.
podcast. So we were collaborating with a bunch of people at the time. This was 2013.
Wow.
And we collaborated together, and then we just kept watching each other's videos. I was like flirting with him. I like your
Oh,
eyes. I like your Canadian accent. And then we just kept talking after that. And we had a really like instant connection. And it just kind of moved from there. We just took it one day at a time, but it went very quickly.
oh my
We
goodness.
met in September 2013. We were married by that June.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's moved very quickly, but I mean, 8 years later, expecting our first kid, like it's such a weird story, but that's the power of social media.
Yeah, it's such a modern love story, right?
Yes.
Social media and meeting on YouTube. I think that's amazing. And I think that's where when we take the pressure off of social media, and like maybe for some people it's more stressful to think of showing up as yourself, in the beginning, but once you get comfortable with that and understanding that like the expectations there are whatever you want them to be, then I feel like you just hold it a little bit lighter and you can have a little more fun with it because it should be fun. And if every time you open Instagram you're stressed out and you're like trying to push a product, that changes the way people feel about interacting with your content because it changes the energy in the way you're showing up, to post that content. So I know you work with small business owners, when you have someone who comes to you like with a failed launch and they say, okay, I my engagement was low on all my posts throughout the launch. I feel like my follower count just doesn't support me selling these products. How do you help guide them? Because I feel like in that case it's a messaging problem, not a follower count problem, or I mean engagement would be a messaging problem, but how do you help people in those instances where they're not seeing the conversions they would like to from social media?
Yeah. This is such a tough conversation because it's typically at a very vulnerable point in a business owner's kind of career.
Mhm.
And you have to kind of look at things objectively as a business owner, which is hard to do in that moment.
Mhm.
But you're right in that some of it is messaging. Were you speaking the right words to the right people?
Mm.
Did they fully understand the value that your products and services were going to bring? And did you connect with enough of the right people?
Right.
And that's becoming harder and harder on social media as more and more businesses start using it as a tool. There's more competition, there's more out there, and then a lot of the changes with things like Facebook ads over the past year, it is tough to do. But really understanding that messaging piece is key, and it's not just a message of talking about that product specifically. It's the message of building the community. And
Right.
our community members can be advocates for us, which is the ultimate goal, I think, for social media, especially for product based. If
Mhm.
something pops up in your feed and it's amazing, you want to text it to your girlfriend, you want to
Yeah.
share it in a DM to someone. So sometimes that content isn't necessarily directly selling a product.
Right.
So it's really making sure that you have that layered in, and your audience can become advocates for you and kind of share for you and help extend your reach. The other thing I'd look at is the people in your audience.
Mm.
Number follower counts aren't everything. I have clients who have one of my clients has 2,000 followers, sells out her high ticket group program every time she launches it because her audience doesn't actually want to follow and admit that they have this problem. They kind of
Right.
they maybe sign up for the email list, but they don't really follow, they don't really engage because they don't want to be like, I have this problem.
Yes.
So follower count isn't everything. And I have the opposite happen. Sometimes clients who have, tens of thousands of followers also have a failed launch because those tens of thousands of followers aren't their ideal. I actually have a client, we're going through this now. They followed her for one reason, and now she's trying to launch, group programs, and they're not there for that reason.
Mhm.
And so it can be very challenging. So it's really identifying that you have the right people in your audience, and then identifying that you have the right message for those people, which is really tough to analyze. And I would challenge you, if this is you, to look at this before launching. So
Mm.
by the time you launch, hopefully those two things are resolved. You've got the right people, you've got the right message, because then when you launch, it'll be more successful because you've got those things resolved. If you launch and you don't have answers to those things, you're
Mhm.
going to have to figure it out along the way, which just means your timeline may be a little bit longer.
Yes. So we can use my business as an example for this. So I have found recently that my followers, I have some very loyal, active followers and podcast listeners, but they are not always the ones buying the high ticket items. Like I offer one-on-one marketing coaching, which is can be more high ticket. And so I have a couple things, of course, for that group. But I feel like at this point, like if you do what you said and you evaluate your followers and you find that like they're no longer maybe a match for what you're offering, how do you is it a marketing messaging? Like, are you shifting the messaging? Is it evaluating like the content you're putting out? Is this solving and attracting problems of this different audience? Is that where we start with the
Yeah, so it really depends. It could be all
yeah.
three.
Yeah.
Um, it really depends. So in marketing specifically, sometimes, especially at the higher ticket, they don't want to know how the sausage is made,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yes.
like they just want to pay someone and have them figure it out.
Yes.
And so for that group of people, it's tougher to connect with them using social media alone. So
Mhm.
typically I'm actually connecting with collaboration partners.
Got it.
So that's what I would suggest in, a similar situation, in that I'm connecting with PR strategists, web designers, and I'm still talking about how the sausage is made and talking about social media and my approach, so that I'm, still perceived as someone knowledgeable in the space, but I'm connecting with people who can refer me those clients.
Right.
And social media supports that, right? It gives you that boost. So it really does depend on the industry. If you are selling more of a, low ticket, click to buy sort of item,
Mhm.
those people are very active on social media. They can help, and they often become your advocates who are referring other people
Oh.
to you.
Mhm.
And also just jumpstarting conversations. Like, people want to go in communities that are active. And
Right.
so even if that person never buys from you, but they're commenting on every post, they listen to every
Mhm.
podcast, that's a very valuable community member, because they're going to help other community members lift them up. They're
Yeah.
going to show that, this is a great community to be a part of. So that helps too. But then it is also looking at the content itself. You do want to have a balance. I think sometimes as business owners, we get so excited about our thing that
Yeah.
we share. That's all we talk about.
Mhm.
But there are a couple few pillars of content, types of content that you want to share. Obviously, you can talk about your thing and promote it and use that transformational language. But you also want to educate, why are you the go-to person in this field? You want to talk about how, this isn't just a topic you're talking about, there's a community behind it. You want to show that human element, give us behind the scenes, show us the process, let us in a little bit. And then you do want to invite your community to participate with engaging content. So ask questions, pull people in through a poll or, something like that. And so having that balance of content really helps as well.
That's super helpful. And I think it's important to identify the people, like you said, that are very valuable in your community, maybe even if they're not the ones like paying you right now, but they're still like active and involved. I think that's so helpful to have them. And what's interesting is too, in my situation, it's like you never know who's watching what. So when you have somebody who's sharing your content and they're just like active and they love your podcast or they love what you do, you don't know who's paying attention to their stories and like who's kind of lurking in the shadows or, behind the curtain just waiting to buy you, because that's what I find. Like my clients, they're not very active often enough, like on my social media. They just come to me ready to buy, that high
Mhm.
ticket ones. And that a lot of times comes down to their own time constraints. And like maybe for their business, they're not the one running the social or they're not on Instagram as often. And so it just keeping that in mind, like when you go to post, you never know who is paying attention and not yet paying you. So I think in those pillars of content that you shared are super helpful too. So the last thing I have before I will wrap it up here is, what about hashtags? Like I had a client this morning who was asking me about hashtags, and she said she had done the 3 to 5 and she wasn't getting found, and she has a brick and mortar locally. And so she bumped it up, and she's done some research to see what local people are following. And she said it's like the transformation and the level of engagement has been huge in the past 4 weeks. So what is your take on hashtags?
This is something that is heavily debated,
Yes.
which is so funny. But, I do find that more hashtags work. Instagram recently announced that 3 to 5 is like the
Yeah.
magic number, but I've always found like 15, 20
Okay.
hashtags to work way better.
Yes. That's what we concluded in our meeting. And I cut you off. Sorry. And go on.
No, no, no. That was it. I mean,
Okay.
it depends on the hashtag, obviously, but you know, some testing is involved. And I love the story because she tried one way, it didn't work. She tried
Yeah.
another way, it did work. And I feel like, well, if it's working, just keep doing that.
Right. Right. And is there any way, someone else asked me this and I didn't know the answer, but if is there, you can see that people are coming from hashtags in your Instagram insights, but is there any way to see like one step down, like what hashtags they are? No. So it's just,
Yeah, there's not an easy way. If you boost the post,
hmm,
sometimes depending on, like, it seems like Instagram's changing this feature, but sometimes you can see the specific hashtags that got the most reach.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, some of us don't want to boost a post every time.
right.
So But otherwise, it's just kind of a testing, mixing and matching, and making sure you have a variety of hashtags that works the best.
Yeah. And experimenting, right? And paying attention to, I think, track. Oh, there they go, making their debut. So just do your hashtag research, experiment. Oh, I was going to say with hashtags, if you are experimenting with different hashtags, just document which hashtags you use. Like I just copy and paste them into my notes app. And then I kind of play around with those. Or you can look at others in your industry and see which hashtags they're using or what your audience is following. Just experimenting again. So much of it is just kind of figuring out what works best for you in your business. So, with that, is there anything else? I mean, you've given us so much great information today, but is there anything else, any other tips you would like to offer small business owners who are DIYing their social media right now?
Yes. So if you are time strapped,
Mhm.
I would love it if you could focus more on connecting than on content.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes it's really easy to cut that piece out and just push out content. But the beauty of social media is in the connection piece. And so typically I recommend spending about an hour a week on content,
Mhm.
and then spending 15, 20 minutes a day on connecting. And so that should help get you to the next level in your business.
Yes, thank you. And when you say connecting, that can go both ways, right? Like engaging with the people who are engaging with your content, but also reaching out to others in your audience and like engaging with their content.
Yes, finding new people. My favorite way to do this is collaboration partners.
Hmm.
So not your direct customer, but someone who also serves your direct customer or client. And it's such a great way to kind of build your network.
Yeah, like we're doing right here. It's so great.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. Let the people know how they can get in touch with you and what you have going on at the end of this year.
Yes. So if you're listening to this podcast, head on over to my podcast, the Savvy Social Podcast. We talk about social media strategies and the how and why of social media. And then I also have a free course that walks you through how to build a social media strategy. It's at onlinedrea.com/free, FREE. And I'm everywhere on social media at Online Drea. I'm having a lot of fun with TikTok right now, just exploring, learning, and experimenting. But I'm Online Drea everywhere.
This is so fun. I love your reels are so great because they're usually like short and sweet, but they pack a punch every time. And I will say, you had something a while ago. This is a while ago, and it was a freebie for like how you create your social media. I think it was stories content and like selling in the stories or something like that. And that has helped me so much to like create my content in advance to be able to just post some of those I don't want to say salesy, not in like a sleazy way, but the posts where I'm talking more about offers and how people can work with me, and it was really really helpful. So thank you so much for all that you do in this space and for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show. This was fun.